associated with it. So we kept this session in order to sensitize all of you, like all the ventures or all the startups who are working on the healthcare sector, to get to know how the system works and what are the essential parameters and the key points which you should focus on while considering your startups, and the rest of the opportunities that are also lying, which we'll be talking about, by which you can use and grow your venture. So before everything, I would just take a few seconds to introduce our guest and speaker, Dr. Vijayasimha. So, hello, sir. A very good evening once again. Talking about sir, so sir is currently working on healthcare solutions that serve and primary and secondary healthcare entities, specifically in emerging economics, developing products for early diagnosis, triaging, and EMR. Sir has specialties in aerospace, biotechnology, robotics, plant automation, medical device and development. And sir is a renowned mentor in this ecosystem. He's training and he's mentoring a lot of startups who are working on the healthcare sector, and he's a part and eminent mentor in a lot of committees and for funding screenings as well. So without taking any further time, I welcome you, sir, once again, and over to you.
Thank you. So good evening, guys. I mean, I guess the topic is very wide-ranging, and since many of you, as I understand, are already in the sector and to a certain extent already have committed yourself to this sector, I thought probably it would be a good idea to remind ourselves, number one, of what we started out to do. And in what kind of an environment are we starting it out to do? Probably, I mean, an immersion into healthcare was quite substantial with the recent COVID pandemic. And all of us understood, in fact, the country or almost everybody understood the nature of how healthcare works and what is the importance of healthcare. And in fact, I would say to a large extent in terms of priorities of spend or the priorities in your purse, healthcare went many notches up. In fact, it went right almost to the top in terms of trying to, sort of survive through this pandemic thingy, whatever it is. But yes, I mean, you have been observing what's been going on. And as such, I think today the opportunities are pretty much staring at us down the line, mainly from the fact that many of these challenges presented opportunities, and they have either sort of highlighted the fact that you have healthcare as an essential part of the government spend too. Up till now, I would say that India used to spend maybe probably close to 1 or 2% of its GDP in public healthcare, and as of now, of course, the spending has almost quadrupled. So this is something that is an opportunity by itself, and it was brought in almost by force into our thinking. Most of you have been at thinking about the business and what you intend to do, and you have got a solution that you are trying to work on so that you can actually address a component of trying to help the healthcare system in this country to be able to meet up with challenges. Now, I know it's a very vast subject, and so therefore I prepared a very generic kind of a presentation with the idea of trying to give you an idea of what the healthcare scenario is going to look like, not only in India, but across the globe, because we all faced, all nations, it was a pandemic, everybody faced a series of problems that set us thinking. And I think those challenges that faced us during the pandemic are the challenges that we have taken into consideration while we are trying to, sort of look at a new paradigm for healthcare. I would request that you guys keep putting your doubts and questions in the chat box while I go through, and I hopefully should be able to answer most of these doubts or questions that you guys may have while I'm in the process of sort of introducing you to this. So spoiler alert, this is just a very generic view of the market, and it will probably help you to see where you are exactly positioned. So let's try to get this to share, and okay, share screen. Does it look okay on your screens? I mean,
so the slides are visible. If we can put it on a full screen.
Full screen. That's a good thing, because I have this bar at the bottom which is preventing me from even accessing that area of the screen. I don't know why it doesn't disappear. It's supposed to.
So you can go to slideshow near record. Yeah. Yes, sir. It's coming now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, I didn't have. I mean, normally I do speak on a set of expectations that people want to hear, rather than droning on something that you guys would probably have already been fed up with, or fed with. So the whole idea is that you can put questions out there. It will probably help me, sort of transgress some of those other areas that probably cannot be fit into this session. Okay, why I decided to talk about the emerging paradigms, and that is probably for the simple reason that medical science as such got a real knock on its head, if you can call it that way, in terms of the way that the pandemic hit us. And to be very frank, none of us had a clue. None of the systems knew what the hell was going on. And what was most important is that we started shooting in the air blindly. I would say to a large extent, we thought it was similar to other kind of ARDS kind of diseases like H1N1, which we had partially sort of, managed. But once COVID came in, I think we had to really put all our resources together. Ventilators suddenly came in demand, and the amount of steroids that were used, all kinds of magic potions also were being touted. In addition to that, of course, there were many I would say kind of medical professionals that were born from the WhatsApp university, as they would say, which had people talking about what could improve your immunity, what could not improve your immunity. And even the pundits also didn't know what was going on. So it gave us a wake-up call on 3-4 different areas. The number one area is that, I would say to a large extent, is that the whole idea of being healthy versus being sick. What were the fine dividing borders between the two? How do we prevent a situation from happening rather than waiting for it to happen? So there was an element of preparedness that was required. And also there was an element of what we call in public health, preventive medical strategies that was there. It also gave us a very good sense that we are all in it together. It's not that you will get the disease, I'm not going to get it. And it just struck everybody, irrespective of whatever your your race, color, creed, sex, whatever it is. It struck everybody. So the idea here is to look at what kind of thinking processes that actually, sort of hit the community across the world to ensure that people manage to get um, a better deal out of medical sciences. And so, yeah, I mean, the definition also had started with that. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It has now become multidisciplinary. It is not a question of disease or sick. It is a question of an overall state of wellness to disease to well-being. And this is governed by a number of factors. And if you see here today, whatever it may be, healthcare actually is only a 20% component of our overall well-being and the health that we call today, right? So it has expanded beyond the scope of what today is a hospital or a clinic or a doctor, but it has gone beyond the. Hello, yeah. Was there a question?
No, Dr. Vijay.
No.
Yeah, please.
So it has become a complete, a holistic, if you can call it that way, an idea of what health is all about. And obviously, I mean, the healthcare system is now struggling to be able to, sort of keep up with this state of holistic approach. These are the drivers. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, COVID was one of the wake-up calls that that hit us, but we also have to remember that the spend also has become, we have become very sensitive to the spend on healthcare for the simple reason that many of these diseases were becoming extremely expensive and divided society into the haves and have-nots. Have healthcare, have not healthcare, and there has been always a challenge. And most countries, as well as international institutions, are talking about how we can make healthcare more inclusive. And the spends correspondingly are rising. If you note here, the spend on healthcare itself globally is going to be what our targeted GDP was probably 5 years from now, right? It's also a fact that the population across the world, which is 7 billion and now moving towards, say, maybe the 9 billion range, a huge chunk of that population is going to be over 65 years of age. Now, when you say that, it means that we would have, it's not that I'm saying that the chronologically aged persons are diseased in any way, but they are compromised in many ways, physically as well as potentially mentally. So therefore, you would probably be faced with a bigger challenge of an aging population in many parts of the Western world, to be precise. Europe, Japan, and many of these countries already have a very significant population of aging, and a significant proportion of their budget goes for taking care of the aging. India is probably going to be like 350 million people, being 65 years plus by 2035, I guess, and that's a big concern right now, and most governments are very cognizant of the fact that we would need to be able to prepare ourselves for that. Well, I think there has been also a change that has happened because of technology, because of that. So there's an emergence of telemedicine. There's an emergence of more and more integrated medicines like functional medicine, or even holistic medicine, where they integrate the traditional medicines like Ayurveda and Chinese medicine into the modern medicine and see if they can get better outcomes with that. So, there's been a lot of changes in that. And I think that is one of the challenges that today's medicine is going to face, that most of the infrastructure and the training and the education, as well as the ability to be able to handle these kind of new growing areas of medicine is going to be much more, I would say, multidisciplinary in nature, which was not the case when people were educated. At least our current medical professionals were educated. I don't know if you've seen this chart. It's called the continuum of care, which has been, I would say, the kind of model that most of us have been brought upon when we were taught that this is what is the state of disease. Disease spelled with T-Y-E-A-S-E, because we have a lot of dysfunctions and disabilities, and so disease came as a part of it. There is well and there is sick. So there is disease and healthies. So here, and this is Narottam Puri's terminology for the two stages when acute healthcare came into the picture. So the thing is that basically, I think the idea was that one kind of follow this from prevention, prediction to taking precautions. That's another secondary form of prevention, to monitoring, and then diagnostics, and then you pass through challenges, therapy, surgery, then again post-surgery you look at monitoring, surveillance, rehabilitation, patient education, and then remote monitoring via telehealth to see how the person is doing. Just like in chronic diseases, you have a continuum that goes on for life. Then you get well, and then you come back to healthy living. So this is an acute episode where you return back to your normal self. But then there are many stages in which you probably don't return to your original self, but to a different level. But then, of course, to a homeostatic state of living post this sort of, surgery or treatment or intervention. And then move towards remote monitoring on a regular basis for chronic patients especially. We also have challenges that are related to the end of life. And we have become sensitive to the fact that end of life needs to be as peaceful, and it's a fact that in all cases there would be an end of life, whatever may be the age. But the fact is that the end of life has to be quite peaceful and straightforward, and I would say happy, rather than going through the whole process with extreme pain and suffering. So therefore, there's a lot of drugs now that are being introduced. Opioids obviously took away one good, I would say, aspect of quality of life and gave you a pain-free life, but that was something that is now being quickly replaced by electroceutical technologies, which are non-pharmacological interventions, right? But what is important here is the trend that is moving, that most of the healthcare systems are moving away from this standard thing, the standard progression of the healthcare system from equity versus cost to something that reduces the equity. And this is through proper prediction and prevention. You would be able to ensure that you are not getting very serious diseases, just like the vaccination process. And then you have this green line, which indicates that if you do get a disease, this is the desirable way of being able to manage it, rather than waiting for it to come to the high equity stage of management. So in low equity settings can we be able to treat. And so a number of new thinking has come within various healthcare systems is what they call as a see and treat. When we say see and treat, and this is adopted by the NHS, and I've been a part of the NHS initiative in the UK to be able to see how the public health system and the primary care system can actually complete a significant portion of both this for the diagnosis, monitoring, and the treatment part of it to bringing people and preventing diseases from becoming too morbid. Um, I'm, I'm using a little terms here, but I'm sure you guys are quite familiar with it right now. Uh, so so here, I would say that there has been a lot of development in devices and drugs where the diagnostic and monitoring systems need to be crashed together to provide a highly specific, highly accurate kind of form of method for disease management. And this uh, technology or whatever this parameter that you are following, especially for a single indication, will move through with you as a monitoring system to say that you don't get a relapse or you're not coming back. We must understand that about 20% of the patients who undergo some of the severe surgeries, such as CABG or whatever it is, develop comorbidities which are quite life-threatening overall. And there is a whole lot of folks who keep coming back to hospitals because of these comorbidities, apart from infections, but also things like atrial fibrillation and so on and so forth. So this is something that needs to be managed at a much more comprehensive level. I will probably need to visit this chart again. So in short, I think newer technologies have also been driving healthcare today, in the sense that we have got much more powerful computing in our hands today. We've got much more powerful sensitive devices and sensors that can actually monitor a lot more things today. And so therefore, we have now started trying to use these technologies and see whether we can actually improve the outcomes through this process. In screening, using telemedicine, in monitoring, using telemedicine, more powerful diagnostic device with the greatest accuracy and speed so that you can do a see and treat with absolute confidence. The emergence of what we call as artificial intelligence or what we call as assistive intelligence, where we are able to predict or even provide a prognosis and monitoring system to ensure that we are able to treat a disease that is much more predictive in a way, and prevent any kind of disaster situation from coming up for whatever reasons. We have robotics, we have wearable devices, and I'm sure all you guys are familiar with all this. 3D printing, it's picked up in a big way. But I think the real impact is going to be seen when you actually use 3D printing for regenerative medicine. It completely changes the organ transplant and the organ and the healing methodologies that we have today. We have genomics as one of the things that is there. I'm sure you're all familiar with genomics, where you can actually look at risk assessment and probably understand some of the diseases better and see what works best, especially in oncology, as we move towards trying to see how some of the monoclonals can be more effective, because they are very finicky. I mean, sometimes it works and sometimes it just doesn't work. Drug delivery, medical imaging. You've probably seen even during the COVID time, people have been taking images of the chest, and AI systems have been analyzing these images to say what is the extent at which the lungs have been damaged. And of course, I'm bringing up an old terminology called big data, which is a fact that, apart from the fact that we have analytics, but the quantum of data that we should be able to handle and which we can generate today is humongous. And this definitely is what is going to, I would say, benefit humankind in terms of being able to build much more robust evidences and evidence-based treatment. So I thought I'll segue here into just one of the challenges, in the sense that you have plenty of challenges and maybe you can have plenty of lectures talking about different challenges. But let's take one of the challenges, which is data. And that's my current pursuit, in the sense we have a lot of data sciences going on. We have a lot of AI research going on, a lot of new ML modalities going on, new analytics developed to be able to scrub data. But what about data? How clean is it? You know, you must be familiar with things like fake news, and you won't believe it. The healthcare system has a phenomenal amount of fake news. Let's say there was a recent report from Mayo Clinic which talked about 40%, 40 to 45% of the referrals from the primary care centers or the initial diagnosis from the primary care centers were wrong. Right? Now that is, I mean, that's, I'm not talking about 10 years or 20 years ago. I'm talking about something that came out as a finding, a clinical finding in Nature, I think just about a couple of months ago, right? So that is been my obsession, and I know that from whatever we have been working on clinical products, our gold standard for a regulatory approval was its sensitivity and specificity of a product in being able to diagnose a disease. Now, what happens is that this is always in the range of about 60 to 70% or maybe 75%, and with a specificity, a sensitivity of that kind, let's say you take a standard heart failure biomolecule marker in the blood called pro-BNP, and if you are in a range that is below 500 micrograms range, you would probably not be able to see whether it's a positive or a negative case. So therefore, the specificity is high, maybe in the 90+ range, but the sensitivity is very poor. But unfortunately, now we've also realized that the specificity can be marred by other sources of elevated NT-proBNP. You get what I'm trying to say? This is true with all blood. Troponin. These are all, sort of markers that are emergency requirements. Also with equipment, like say, for example, ECG and its ability to be able to look at non-STEMI cases. An ST elevation is a good indicator of AMI, but it will not be detected if it is a non-STEMI case. And you will also have a lot of misses there. And still today, people continue to be given antacids just because they were non-STEMI and sent back home. Whereas they are, they would probably collapse in the parking lot as they're going home. So that's one of the major challenges that we are facing today, is that the specificity and sensitivity is just not good enough to be able to provide a follow-on. So a clinical decision is to be triggered with data which is, has to be very specific and also has to be indicative of the seriousness to its sensitivity. So here, what we've come across is that signals today is the primary form of data that we get from the body, either through interrogative or non-interrogative method, or what we call as, like an ECG is a non-interrogative method. The body is producing the signals, we are just listening. But interrogative would involve, say, sending in signals invasively, like an ultrasound or an X-ray or whatever it is, and then trying to look into it, and using a set of response signals, we will be able to see whether there is any change in the system or change in the organs or the tissues that are there, which are from normal to abnormal. So this has set up a very, very multidisciplinary group of clinical scientists who work on sensors, who work on signal processing, and also work on methods by which these sensors will produce the set of sensors that will produce a set of relevant signals. There's no point taking temperature as a monitoring signal because there are so many diseases and it's not specific. So there are so many diseases that will produce temperature. So temperature is only a homeostatic indicator of the autonomic nervous system, right? So that is one. And then, of course, you have the output of that is relevant, accurate, and precise form of data. A big challenge that all of us are working on, and I think that is going to be a method by which most people will be, sort of putting in a lot of effort to achieve. The next stage, after the signals, we start looking at the status or the trends that are there in the signals. Is it out of whack? Is it in whack? Is it significant of a disease? What exactly are we trying to pinpoint and look here to see whether that person is in a disease state or non-disease state? So we have the analytics that are there associated with it, which is the result of a lot of studies to say what exactly is the amount of suffering that the patient is undergoing. Today, the physical examination, almost everything, why physical examination, even imaging, is highly subjective depending on the skill of the person who is going to read it. If they're not skilled, they will miss it, and so therefore you will probably not get an optimal outcome. But if you're skilled, you need to have people who are having that kind of a skill, that kind of experience, and also that kind of deep learning to be able to provide a better understanding of what is the status and what needs to be done. And so therefore, the trend right now is that this data needs to be not only clean, but also interpretable in terms of how accurate it is, right? And also understandable and useful to all the stakeholders in the healthcare system, which means that we have an onerous responsibility within data sciences to be able to provide data reduction in these areas and create statuses and trends that could be understandable to a large extent. It is kind of democratizing the healthcare because the patient is now an important part of the stakeholder and he is made to understand, right? Up till now, whatever the doctor says, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, and then, he swallows whatever is given to him. But today, the engagement of the patient is becoming more and more important in the healthcare because it is known that the patient engagement itself, right, provides maybe through gamification, maybe through whatever it is. But the fact is that it provides better outcomes through the patient engagement because they are also motivated in trying to drive themselves through the right path. And finally, this data is in the presentation form, which is backed by what we call as evidence-based guidelines through a process what we probably use as data engineering, use the algorithms, use the data in different ways of analytics to be able to come out with relevant information. And that is the relevant information in which the patient, the doctors, the paramedics, all these people here, like for example, one of the areas where we find that there is a major lag in actual clinical and evidence-based practice is in rehab, right? And today, rehab is a one-size-fits-all kind of a situation. I know I'm getting into something that is there. The difference between precision medicine and and evidence-based medicine, there is always a big, a battle on which would probably be necessary. But of course, it is very important that um, every individual has his own characteristics, his own ability to take on that. So if rehab has components which are excessively strenuous, it could lead to iatrogenic episodes. Now, this is something we don't want. And this we are seeing more and more, even in post-surgical rehab, where the patients are undergoing, each patient recovers at his own pace, depending upon his own ability to recover. And healing takes place. Now, if rehab is extreme and one size fits all, some patients will suffer a tear, again bleeding, and in many cases, and it's a big challenge today, nobody has really nailed it. Why are we having a 40 to 60% occurrence of atrial fibrillation in post-CABG patients? It's something that a lot of people are trying to find out, and I think the answer may be in the rehab process. So as a quick summary to this particular challenge today and the opportunities that you may see, I could see that, data quality, relevance of the data, then apart from that, of course, using it for predicted outcomes and prognostic utility, we also have the data itself in terms of how we are going to architecture, the nomenclature. There is so many different languages used, so therefore they are all spread all over the place. There's an ICD-10 nomenclature which has come in. Then there is probably SNOMED which has come in, which tries to identify each and every indication with related to. But then, what happens is that there is also another issue of, the fact that when a person comes in with one disease, he doesn't actually have one disease. You cure that one disease, you realize he's suffering from another disease. So that's as one surgeon put it, when you open up, then only you see, what all things are there, right? So there are surprise all through. So there are comorbidities, and some of them are pretty severe, and they coexist. And these are some of the nomenclature which needs to be accommodated in the system to talk about such kind of complex presentations. Besides that, of course, we have the issue of security and privacy and stuff like that. So those are the standards that have been built pretty good right now. But then always, we need transparency in the system because with that transparency, we know what is actually the real truth. And if you don't have transparency, you would probably land up with a lot of fake news or misinterpreted news, as it could be. Yeah, and what is happening is that with all this tightening of regulation and stuff like that, it has muffled innovation and research to a large extent. All my medical devices get developed. I mean, the concept and the prototypes are developed in less than 2 years, right? And then we have to do what we call as a clinical trial, and that can go on for 3 to 4 years, right? That's the nature of some of the things. If you are a medical device developer in the what you call as predicate devices area, which is there is a device which is similar to yours already that has been cleared, or what we call in the US FDA as a 510K approval or a predicate device in the NBD. What happens is that you can quote and say that guy is doing it, so therefore, mine is almost the same, right? And we've got the same kind of tests that are there and the same kind of application. But if you are coming up with a new parameter, like in 2-3 cases where I had with with the product for detecting cancer using electrical impedance spectroscopy, or for that matter, looking at heart failure using a concurrent set of signals that come out from body, three signals that come out from inside the heart, uh, non-invasively. Um, the validation process of the clinical studies, it took us close to about 50 clinical studies to establish in different populations how accurate and how simple and easy to use it was for the number of stakeholders. So be warned that your clinical trials is not to be taken simply. And second thing is that the clinical trials has two purposes, I think, which you're aware of. And one of the purposes is basically to give a validation that your product is functioning and will do its job. And the other purpose, of course, is basically to look at how you will be able to change the healthcare process in its process by uh, increasing the speed of diagnosis or the speed of treatment, or reducing the cost of the overall burden to the healthcare, to the patient or to the healthcare system, the payer, and also how it can be used in the long-term monitoring to ensure the continuum of healthcare, the continuum of care takes place, say, in chronic patients, and they would need to be monitored on a regular basis because there are new drugs coming in, there are new methods of treatment coming in which are non-pharmaceutical. So therefore, we need to be able to monitor those patients to see that they are not going downhill at any period of time, right? So I will pause here, and this is the ecosystem that I was talking about. If you have any questions on the concepts that I have presented here, of course, I mean, I have probably taken only, yeah, there was one, yeah, this chart. This chart, I must confess that I asked ChatGPT to give me what are the new technologies that drive healthcare today, and this is the response it gave to me. I would say considerably comprehensive, but not totally comprehensive, because I don't see that area that I'm working on electroceuticals coming here in any way. So yeah, maybe that hasn't got enough publications for it to be able to, sort of point it out to see that it is there. But today we have an auricular stimulation PENS device that has been approved by the US FDA for pain control in both in neuropathies, especially diabetic neuropathy, in rheumatic joint pains, in management of cancer patients, pain in cancer patients, in post-CABG management, pain management. We have the device has been approved by the US FDA. Earlier, it was being done by opioids. So you can see that this is definitely an emerging field. And yeah, I'm sure the vagus nerve stimulation, the autonomic stimulations, these things have known to actually accelerate wound healing, have known to be able to modulate endocrine secretions. So therefore, now we are now looking at a whole range of new therapeutics that is based on what we call as electroceuticals. So were there any questions that came up here?
Sir, good evening.
Yeah.
Myself, I'm Dr. Balajnesh. So,
yes.
Of course, I have fortunately co-founded M-Sensing Technologies Private Limited. Of course, we are into medical electronics, and God's grace that we got the grant from Startup India Seed Grant, MEIT, and the Innovation Voucher Program.
Yeah.
And even we got the Best Healthcare Startup Award for the year 2022 from Fiji. Okay. And our product, of course, we have validated in number of hospitals, and we got the field trial report too. The question that I have here is for the medical electronics, our device comes under class B. When we approached the state, the drug authority, and because our product, it has some kind of innovation, and we were told to approach central CDSCO.
Yeah, CDSCO.
Yeah, when we approached the CDSCO, we were told that it is you have to get the approval from the state drug authority. Of course, we try to upload all our documents in the web page CDSCO, and we were we got some kind of the difficulty in some other the document they were asking us. And when we approached one consultant, and they were asking us some very exaggerated price. Of course, any startup, we cannot, it is not affordable to us. The question again here is, we wanted to have 3 certificates, manufacturing license, sales license, and field trial, the license certificate. Can you give us some insight on this?
Right. So any medical product has to be cleared by regulatory bodies, right? That is a given, right? So you have to be able to get in what you call a clearance from the CDSCO for your product. Now, the various classifications based on what is the risks that are there in the particular device, and whether you have taken care of those risks. That is one. There are 2 parts to any regulatory device examination. The one part is safety. Now, in safety, you have to be able to provide every possible condition, or what we call as risks management. Are you a 13485 certified group?
No, sir. We have not been certified by anybody.
No.
The problem here is, of course, as a startup, we do not have any manufacturing facility. Because this particular the manufacturing license certificate, of course, we were.
No. I think the thing is 13485 is.
Yes, the ISO 13485 we were told to get.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we do not have any manufacturing facility. That is where that we struck up with.
You don't have to. You have to have 13485 if you do any aspect, even design of medical devices, right? You don't need to be a manufacturer. If you are a medical device person, 13485 ISO standard is mandatory, because most of the definitions in 13485, right, is basically on design and development of medical devices, and you're in it.
Yes, sir.
So therefore, you need to be able to first of all understand what 13485 is all about, right? Very simple, I'm telling you, it's very simple. It's a way of life. Like ISO 9000 is a way of life, right? So what happens is, it's a lot of common sense out there. It just tells you, please remember that this common sense is for the good of mankind, right? And for your fellow man. Not just a decoration that will sit on your wall as a certificate, right? So what I would suggest is that you need to look at this whole ISO standard, read through it, and understand what its applicability is. The idea is that your practice, the way you design machines, the way you design your devices, is governed by the ISO standard, or at least it's guided by the ISO standard. I won't say governed, but guided by the ISO standard. This is the way you should do it, right? Now, there are 2 important things that come, which are specific for this particular business, which is the medical devices or the medical electronics business. It's called ISO 14971, right? Balaji, you
okay.
There?
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
So 14971 is called risk management. This risk management you have to carry out thoroughly, because a regulator, he will ask you first, have you done risk management? Show me your risk management file. If you don't have it, he will say, okay, go back and finish it up, right? But what is more important, in any device development, there are 2-3 things that we start off very early in the design stage itself. And one of the things is risk management, right? The other two, of course, are important. One is design for manufacturability. And the third is your clinical investigation report, which you, investigation plan, which you intend to do to validate your product. These 3 elements have to come at the stage when you hit the drawing board.
Yeah, understand, sir. I'm hearing you. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So this is what it is. So now you need to go through a proper quality management system before you can go to CDSCO. There is an equivalent of, ISO standard here, and it's very simple to get. It's not very difficult. You need to have documentation, evidence, all those things properly filed in little files, so that you can satisfy the requirement for the regulatory agencies. But your 14971 exercise, which is an inherent element for the regulatory agencies to see whether your device is going to kill people because it's going to pose a risk, is something that they would like to see. So whenever you're doing risk management, it is not only identifying the risks that could be there, like even a device, if it falls on somebody's leg or foot, is a risk, right? So under such circumstances, what is the mitigation, risk mitigation? For example, I built a ventilator for an ambulance. One of the tests requirements for an ambulance is that it has to withstand 10 G force, right? Acceleration force. And the thing is that it needs to be able to withstand it without moving more than 4 or 5 millimeters if there is a 10 G force. So how well you are able to fasten the device onto the vehicle to ensure that at least it doesn't fly around and kill people as a result of the deceleration or acceleration, right? So that forms a part of the risk management. How do you design to ensure that it doesn't do that? This is 14971. There is a chart there, a spreadsheet which you can use, design it, and then classify it into various types of hazards, whether it's going to kill somebody, whether it's going to maim and injure somebody, or whether it's going to be not so significant but can cause some monetary loss or whatever it is, right? This risk score, as a result of all this multiplication of all these sub-scores, will need to be reduced beyond a certain level. And how it is to be reduced is a mitigation strategy, which you need to redesign into your electronic system or your prototype system or your mechanical system for also, right? So these are the things that the regulator is going to see, and you'll have a problem. Of course, the Indian regulator right now is just doing copy and paste of the earlier MDD of EU CE mark, right? It's a copy and paste. Standards are also copy and paste. But the fact is that you need to be able to at least do that to ensure that is there. So if you're having doubts about the classification or whatever it is, it's very simple. You can just ask somebody. And yeah, I mean, if you give the whole job to get a regulatory clearance for you to a consultant, they're going to charge you a lot, because they're going to say, write all the documents, make your systems and processes work, and they will be just like an Accenture or a consulting organization will come in and ask and do your complete organizational change. Better than that is that you understand it and you get it operational from internal sources. So please do read this ISO standard. Please also do read. It's very simple. So I would say most of my regulatory processes are DIY unless it comes into a clinical thing. Then I have to get a sign off from a qualified medical professional. MD and above needs to qualify it.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And we wanted to learn everything. So because the kind of the charges they were making, of course, so exaggerated, which we cannot afford. We wanted to learn, and please help us to connect with any startup already they have gone through all these stages, so that we would learn it from those startups and from all these because the stages would be so common to each and every startup, right? And if we are able to get the help from those people, of course, we also would understand the process and we also can get the help from them. So can you connect with us with some startup who has gone through all the stages, sir?
Balaji, so many startups have gone through the process. I mean, lots of them. I don't know about, you're based in Chandigarh, right?
I'm from Chennai, sir.
Oh, you're from Chennai?
Yeah, I'm from Chennai.
Which incubator are you in?
KL Incubator Vijayawada, Anna University, and Healthtech and Annamalai University. All these incubator, of course, I got a grant.
Yeah, I think, most incubators in Bangalore have a regulatory person who's handling this, either as an advisor or a mentor in their cohort. I'm sure, I don't know, would you guys be, sort of having a mentor board or something of that sort, a bunch of people? Because, what happens is that these mentors, they provide you with experience and also maybe the connects also of how to go about doing it.
Sorry for interrupting here. Balaji, can you write to us? So we'll also probably try to connect you respective.
Okay, sir. Okay, spare, sir. And you have my mail ID, so I would send you my the request, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
You can do that. I mean, there are a lot of companies, a lot of individuals also from the. In fact, I have about at least, I know 6-7 people from Chennai itself who work on this. In that IIT Park is there, right?
IIT Research Park, we already contacted with sir. Of course, they are helping at the preliminary level. Of course, the latest point of time, of course, we are not getting, of course, the kind of the support that we are expecting. Anyway, I take your advice, sir. Of course, the organizer also, they were promising me to send the request. So we would do that. Thank you so much. I consumed your lot of time. Thank you.
No, 13485, my summary, 13485, please read, understand, and implement, whether you certify yourself or not, but at least implement that method of working.
Fair, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Take care.
Do we have a few more minutes to ask a question? Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah. I'm nice and easy today.
Okay, excellent. So first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Vijayasimha, for A, very informed presentation. B, using ChatGPT. I think that's an excellent way to see whether those things can start to help in the research as well. And I really liked your point in regards to patient engagement and role of patients, which is certainly changing in the healthcare ecosystem. Just a little bit about myself. I am Sandeep Gaba. I'm the CEO of a Swiss-based health tech company that is Alice Health, which is looking to launch in India. I've spent about a decade and a half working for a large corporate in a healthcare company in Switzerland, working in commercial and technology functions. But now we are really looking to expand in the patient engagement space within India itself. I am interested to know your views in terms of clinical insights generation. So specifically your point in regards to status and trends and building understandable physical and understandable clinical biomarkers for patients and physicians. So I'm interested to know your points on that. What is the state that you see for patients' view in terms of owning their health data and clinical insights? That's the first thing. And the second, I'm very interested to learn about your views in terms of health data monetization and patients' role in that. So what is the inertia that you've come across, especially around digital health trends for patient health data monetization in exchange of health rewards and to provide better access for patients itself?
Right. I guess to answer your question in just one single paragraph may be a challenge. You may not be satisfied with that. But the fact is that why is my obsession with data at the moment? The major source of data, like today, if we are looking at what are the monitoring physiological parameters we are using, or what are the criteria, say, for example, in an ICU, for discharge of a patient from the hospital, what are the parameters we are using to discharge a patient, right? 50% of it, that call is taken on a subjective basis, 50% of it is actually taken on other parameters, maybe a few blood tests and say JBP and stuff like that, depending upon the disease, of course. So the idea here is that we need more objective data to start with, right? Because the level of skill will give you different levels of information that is there. Say, for example, even taking a pulse itself or taking blood pressure itself varies from person to person, right? And it depends really on the skill level. So therefore, the patient has to undergo, or even the person has to undergo, multiple measurements of blood pressure, because the doctors don't trust the other person taking the measurement. That is one. What a waste of time, right? But there is also another fact. Blood pressure is never constant. Now, if there is a tiger or a lion suddenly appears through the door of your clinic, of course, that's a very unusual situation. But if it does, what happens to your blood pressure, right? Oh, forget about a lion or a tiger. A very pretty nurse just walks into the door. Even that is good enough to change your blood pressure, right, Sandeep? So the whole idea here is that measurement of blood pressure, is the one that I should take, or what do I take? Make the guy rest for some time, blank out the room, and then take his blood pressure? Or is there better information in the way the blood pressure changed when he was subjected to stimuli?
Building a trend, I think that's what you're heading to.
That is the trend, right?
Yeah.
So we mistake many times that a stat information or a status information is all that is needed to be able to make a clinical decision. Here, there is a need, especially for dynamic systems like our body, which is more of a video show rather than a slide show, if you can call it that way, right? That we need to have this kind of trend information. Now, what information do you get out of a trend? That is what is important today as a relevant piece of information. If I apply stimulus, there is a orthostatic test for neuropathies and also for cognitive measurements. That's known as the Valsalva's maneuver, right? Now, in Valsalva's maneuver, we actually change the patient's position from lying to standing to sitting, and then measure the changes that happen in the system there, in the body. I mean, in the parameters. So this is one way that you actually stimulate the condition, and then you actually take the measurement is what you need to. So there is an interrogative process that happens before you actually stimulate these changes. So I'm saying that, the idea here is now to be able to actually do trend measurements more than just stack measurements. And if you see today, everything is stacked, whether it's a blood test or whether it's a X-ray or whether it's, except for the fact that you have MRIs or what do you call as kinetic MRIs and stuff like that. But everything else, like functional MRIs, are continuously changing phenomenon that you measure. So there is more information in the trends and much more specific information in the trends than actually in this thing. So I use it a lot in my cardiac devices.
Yeah. And do you have sort of thoughts around, patients' engagement into that? How they are sort of, do they come more informed in your clinic now with certain digital tools? Maybe sort of, there are certain in India that is launched during COVID. They kind of gained a lot of prominence as well. Did that help in sort of changing certain mindsets for people to kind of take their own ownership for their health itself? And if there is monetization,
the whole idea was that people are now trying to introduce gamification into the whole thing. Now the thing is that you can introduce gamification if you know what the goals are, right? And what your parameters are, or your strategy to achieve those goals are, right? So it's basically a thing like that. So what people understand best is, like, say, blood sugar should be 45 or 110 or whatever it is max. Yeah, postprandial. He gets 145. His goal is to bring it to 110. Then there is an internal process that takes place where that person begins to introspect, understand, and say, okay, these are the levers I'm going to move to be able to achieve that, right? So this is the process of patient engagement. So the best thing is, like, for example, if I tell a patient your heart rate is 125, right? And and I say the standard is 100 and say maybe 95 to 100 max, right? So he's got a high heart rate. But then what lever does he move to be able to achieve that 100 heart rate, right? So he cannot do it himself. He needs to work with his doctor to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, there is lack of information there, right? Today, at least.
But the fact is, the fact is he's got this 100 as a score, and he can measure it today with even with his wristwatch, right?
Correct.
So he becomes a part of that whole game, rather than the doctor saying, okay, take this tablet, come in after 6 months, let me check, right? And heart rate is completely a variable thing, just like blood pressure. So it depends really on what you've been doing. You've climbed stairs, you have a high heart rate. If you're sleeping, you have a different heart rate. So those are the kind of scores that need to be. So we have, say, in a heart failure patient, we have a score that reflects on the ability of the patient or the efficiency of the heart's ability to pump blood, right? If that efficiency falls, that efficiency number comes as a score to the patient, and the patient says, look, I don't know what is this, maybe I need to talk to my physician, right? The physician also says, well, I also can change the medication or the dosage or the titer or whatever it is to be able to meet that goal. Let me try that. So that happens in real time. It doesn't happen in 6 months intervals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and I'm then so I'm guessing the monetization element to that, which I've been touching upon, it's not a concept that has certainly caught up a lot in India yet, or in exchange of health rewards, or do you have sort of certain views around that? Because we are, the thing, sort of just to give you a little bit of a background, we are looking at certainly advanced AI and computational health sciences capabilities to really inform patients more about the clinical biomarkers itself. And as you, in your presentation, you were also calling out, it's not necessarily one disease that a patient comes with. So our viewpoint is how can we make sure that patients are more aware about what's really happening clinically in their body itself, and not just for themselves as a carer as well. Sort of, people taking care of their parents, people taking care of their kids. So, and all of that can be potentially monetized through a health data marketplace itself. So that's sort of where the point also comes in. Is there a tendency or is a natural inclination towards my data is my ownership, or is that something you would say any company or any health tech organization coming in needs to spend a lot of time on the mindset as well, because there is a huge gap in terms of sort of having that understanding, just so that if you have certain thoughts around digital health capabilities around that.
Yeah, so my data is my data. That is untenable. It can only be licensed out like an IP to somebody, for usage, for whatever research, for whatever it is, for the treatment. So the ownership of the data is for sure belongs to the patient, but you would be allowed to be a caretaker of the data, or maybe you'll be allowed to use the data for the benefit of the patient itself, either through whatever, research or evidence-based classifications or, But the fact is, how do you monetize it? The monetization of that data comes from the fact that the person will use the data for his own benefit, but at the same time, that data is given to him through this process. So like in my cardiac device, it's not in a chronic heart patient, they prefer to take a subscription, right? Anytime, any place I want to take a measurement, I pay a flat fee as a subscription, and I can take a measurement, the data is available. In the case of an acute episode, the patient is monitored till the time he or she gets fully recovered, right? But the stakeholder there is a different person who actually does the measurement, and that is the attending physician or the nurse person who is there, right? So they have an institutional usage part of it, which is, part of that. And it's all calculated on the basis of what value we add to the patient's life and what is the kind of subscription we will get out of it. To be frank, I mean, the value of healthcare or the value of one's own health was lower than that of the health of one's car 5 years ago, right? We took insurances for the car, but we didn't take health insurances. Now the modes are changing. People have realized it. I've seen people who have just got into insurance amongst the elderly, the 60 plus, and they've been charged 75K plus for a premium, right? Because they never took insurances all their life. So there is no, the whole idea is that the value system has changed since the pandemic. And I think it's changed for the good also. Because even now, the pandemic is not over. We are seeing impacts of long COVID on people, right? There are cases that are coming in saying that, is it because of the vaccine or is it because of COVID? Now I'm not able to remember things. My short-term memory has gone down, or, lots of people now attributing stuff to COVID, which is also part of non-COVID. Plus also you have people who are have a distorted sense of smell, parosmia, even today. Yeah. Right. So, what I'm saying is that I would say monetization on data is not by being a caretaker of the data, because that is something that you can, to a certain extent, say that, but is in being able to generate the data for the patient.
Yeah.
Right.
No, excellent. I think I got the answers. So thank you for covering sort of various elements of that part itself. And yeah, no, I appreciate, of course, this webinar itself. I think it's very informative. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I must confess, I'm a practitioner, not much of a of a lecture guru kind of a person. But as a general routine, I kind of refurbish my scenario planning on the healthcare side, and this just happened to be an occasion when I was thinking of one such scenario being sort of refurbished.
I mean, it's a way to create an impact as well, right? To influence large parts with your expertise. So definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on around, but then I think the summary here is that the see and treat is becoming a trend now across all public healthcare systems. Cervical cancer is one that we have already implemented in the UK NHS. It will be implemented across the world, and of course India will follow, because we are still not sure whether our own innovations will work for us. So they say, like, why don't the Europeans try it out, then we'll try it out, kind of a thing, So
I think it needs partnerships. Let's put it this way. I mean, having lived in Europe for about 20 years, I can say it's not a perfect healthcare system either. Of course, it's a very high cost driven system, and it's definitely, I mean, we have different challenges itself. Sometimes when I do visit my own motherland, India, I realize that we are more advanced in terms of, or more lenient in terms of data sharing, in terms of sharing insights, patients, and having that level of engagement with the clinician. Versus here, it's, I mean, you could actually feel that there is a huge gap in there as well. But of course, if something sort of critical happens, you can trust on a clinical system here that it will take off, and the cost won't be a huge aspect of that. So and Asia, or lean economies as I call them, sort of, we are somewhat an obese economy. The lean economies like India, Africa, they are more worse and more lenient in terms of how the data is used, how healthcare is provided, and that's why sort of the crisis management of COVID was also better managed, because we weren't sort of divulged into too much regulations itself, and we were
the cultural approach to privacy is also quite different, cultural. Yeah. So you go to a marriage, the ladies will ask you, where are you working? What are you doing? Are you married? How many children do you have? What are their names? How much salary do you get? And that sort of a thing straight away.
These are not the questions we usually ask here. That's definitely true. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a cultural difference. I mean, in a bus stand, you say you're a doctor, and then the person will start babbling away, pull out medical records, whatever it is, and show it to you and say, like, what do you think? I have gas, problems, and this problem and that problem. So it's not really the cultural approach to privacy is different. I mean, here we are kind of more open and transparent about our lives, but at the same time, there's a hell of a lot of fake news that goes around.
Thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
With the interest of time, we can take one or two final questions, and then we can wrap.
Sure.
Srinivasa, you have a question? You have raised the topic.
Yeah, I think this current obsession of mine with the continuum of care is something that India is different from many other countries, especially with the advent of long COVID and chronic disease management. We are seeing how we can actually engage with this journey, and what kind of devices there. Obviously, inside hospital, outside hospital, portability, wearability, all those things are also part of it that goes with that. But the fact is that how do we put the whole group together like a WhatsApp group so that they can, have communication set up? And Sandeep, you must be familiar that every consultation here on telemedicine is also charged for, almost as high as a visit charge to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that to go to the hospital, you need to spend that amount of money traveling there, getting there, and at the same time, of course, you don't get that full thing of sitting in front of that mental satisfaction of sitting in front of a doctor and chatting, and of course, various people will have different this thing, but then most of the time it's a teacher-child kind of transaction where the doctor is saying, do this, do this, do this, do this. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. The consultation over, right? So the whole idea is that you can't take much time. So in that time, you need to make your clinical decision, and it's always a broad spectrum antibiotic, a broad spectrum antibiotic, maybe an anti-inflammatory agent so that it gives you temporary relief. But whatever it is, it's the kind of interaction that is there. But let it be for sure that you give something that doesn't land up in a situation where the person is not getting relief, or probably is not getting into a worst case situation, an iatrogenic event.
I mean, just on that, Dr. Vijayasimha, I mean, so I think from a patient perspective, I kind of feel like that it's a good access to have, and a patient can decide whether they would like to go for a telehealth or whether they would like to have a physical visit. Although in Europe we have seen different challenges of telehealth. We did a case of that in Oxford where we were really looking at if that can be adopted in NHS, and the challenges were more coming from a viewpoint of, can people really translate? Do they have the space to have a conversation? Is somebody else listening in the house? So it's a different challenge. As you said, India is obviously a lot more open, and I do feel like it's a lot more adopted in India in comparison to some of the other developed nations. And that's sort of one example of what I was talking about earlier, that India is a bit more open about that and more lenient about that, and from a healthcare view. Saiteja, just real quick, I put one question, and that is more around research data. I don't know if you can answer, or if it's sort of for the whole audience, but just if there is accessibility of anonymized data available, because especially for a health tech organization which is looking to add a lot of inputs in a country like India, I do recognize there is large amount of data and MOUs needs to be signed. But if as an incubator ISB might be aware of that can provide certain access, we would very much like to be part of that. My team currently has around sort of 4,000 patient data, which we have procured from various sources, but also we are training our algorithms in a view that it can really advance, clinical insights for patients itself. So if there is accessibility, we would be very happy to get certain guidance around that, either from Dr. Vijayasimha or anyone who's on the call here.
So I've been down that road trying to get good data, and just to give you one particular instance, there was a large study that was conducted, clinical study that was conducted to see what is the epidemiology of chronic kidney failure in India, right? And the whole idea was that you would have a couple of tests that would identify whether it's an acute episode or it's a chronic condition. So you had to have a certain period of time where you followed up to see whether the person has recovered. Then he's acute. If he is not recovered, then he's a chronic kidney patient, CKD patient. So what was used? EGFR, obviously, right? And so it was, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people were screened using that algorithm for EGFR. And then when somebody noticed saying that, this EGFR algorithm, who has developed the algorithm, right? This is under the, American Kidney, whatever association algorithm. This is yes, but in American Kidney Association, they have different algorithms for different race groups, right? They have algorithms for the Black Americans, they have algorithms for the whites, and they have different, coefficients and parameters which are added to the algorithm. Which did you adopt? We adopted the white one. Okay, fine. But do you think that is relevant in this country? Have you tested to see whether it is really indicative of CKD?
Yeah.
Because it's very obvious that they had to have 2-3 different coefficients for different populations. Obviously, a similar study needs to be done here to find out whether those coefficients are, applicable here.
Yeah. I mean, precisely for that reason.
It wasn't. It wasn't. applicable here.
Precisely for that reason, we want to actually test on the local data, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to test on different population. And of course, if you know, as I said, I've spent 15 years in healthcare, so recognizing the importance of clinical trials, in diagnostics and pharma itself, both. That's why we are really interested to get access to good data, of course, on an Indian population, because that's also a major part of our target audience itself.
So that's probably one of the challenges we have today, good data.
Yeah.
So the warning is, whatever data you pick up right now, you may have sourced it from the government or even from WHO. But the moment you put it into your AI systems, algorithms, and machine learning systems, you won't know what to do with the outliers. Throw them out the window, which is quite significant.
It's taking time, but I'm sure. I mean, as a company, we'll have to be optimistic that we will get there, because we are really trying to solve a particular problem. But it's definitely taking time and a lot of computational effort itself. So, yeah.
Yeah, the handwriting has been a source of a lot of data. The written prescriptions have been a lot of source of data for the pharma companies. But leading it required a special piece of software. And then, of course, there was a need to re-audit it, like the cause of death in the death certificate. People just didn't believe it because everybody was just putting, some random numbers into it, cardiac failure, heart failure, whatever it is, because that is non-controversial. Heart failed ultimately. But then it's always a case where you're not sure whether your data should be dependent on that, because my AI system, if I'm working on an AI system, which I don't, of course, at the moment, I'm still struggling with data. But if my AI system gets garbage in, then you know what comes out.
Yeah. You're
Who
on mute.
have your hands up?
Raise the hand.
Satyaja, you were on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, I think Srinivas have the question now. He has raised the hand.
Sir, I think I wanted to ask you some time ago. I think you answered part of it, so I'm going ahead and asking it. We developed this EHR systems in the sense that we already have a few clients and lots of clients in Hyderabad, wherein we're collecting all this data and everything, right? From what I understood from this one is like whether the future of healthcare or whatnot, these things are mostly like an aggregator kind of a thing. Okay, now if I open my LinkedIn, like there's a big war going on whether aggregators are better or platforms are better or something else. So when we go down, and you also said many times that data is a major issue when you go to this, whether we want to develop an AI or anything, India data is a major issue. That's one of the major reasons why we developed a EHR platform, and we made the sale in Hyderabad, and everything looks promising to us. But in your opinion, do you really think that, from whatever I understood from this presentation, doctors are comfortable in an aggregator kind of a model, or do you see a use case where it's better that we develop an ecosystem kind of a thing so that all this data is interoperable between different stakeholders?
Yeah, I'm not too sure whether we have evolved to a situation where we care that much about a patient, apart from his consultation fees. Right?
Right.
So it's an unfortunate situation because many hospitals expect you to meet certain targets that their investors ask them to meet, right? So there is a tremendous pressure on the doctors to start hoisting all unnecessary diagnostic tests, procedures, etc., etc. Besides that also, I don't know what is the challenge there, but maybe you guys can have a look at it. The data that the doctors input are far from adequate and useful, right? Um, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases. There have been, like, there is a very large hospital here, I won't take names, probably second largest chain of hospitals after Manipur, I guess.
Then I know the name, so please go ahead.
we were looking at some of the data that they write in their discharge certificates, right? The error, like for example, a simple error like local anesthesia versus general anesthesia. I don't know whether it was done intentionally or not for insurance purposes, but a simple thing like general anesthesia versus local anesthesia, that error was there in almost 35% of the discharge certificates for surgery, right?
Understood.
Right? How can I base my AI system or any other system on that kind of data? It's fake right in the instance at the point of entry. How do you control that? I have no clue at the moment. Unless the patient is able to put pressure. Even in my own near and dear one, there was a spinal surgery conducted on an L4 or L10. It was to be conducted. It was done on L11 or something. And the doctors and the radiologist and the orthopedic guy is fighting. Both of them super specialists. They're fighting with each other, saying that how do you count the number of the spine numbering from the top or from the bottom? He says, I counted from the bottom. The radiologist says, yeah, in medical school, you were taught to count from the top. So, you know, this is something that is very tough to resolve at the moment.
Understood.
Yeah, thank you so much, Srinivas. Over to you, Aaron.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vijay, for your time. And thank you so much, participants, for greatly engaging in this session. Just to give you an overall update on the opportunities part. So I-Venture at ISB, it's launched a first healthcare accelerator program known as iHeal. You can just check in the website. We can drop the link here in the chat box itself. So it's one of its kind accelerator program where we are focusing on 5 different sectors of healthcare. That is geriatric population, maternal child and healthcare, again, infrastructure and management, disease and diagnostics, and overall engagement. So if you could just check out if you're working on any one of these sectors, and if you feel that any technology which you are right now working upon is above TRL level 3 and it's ready to accelerate, then you can go ahead and apply. The last date for this application is 30th of January. And it's a 6 months accelerator program, and we can go ahead with this acceleration part as well. So the link has been put by Saikat over here in the chat box. So you can just check, and we can look after the engagement as well. So if you have any queries, you can write down to us, and just go through it, guys, once again, as it's a good opportunity for you all if you're looking for acceleration and the follow-on funding as well. So thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Yes,
ISB is the same one at Hyderabad, the same ISB?
Yes, sir. So it's both the campuses.
Yeah.
One school, 2 campuses. So AAC is situated in Mohali, and D-Labs is situated in Hyderabad campus as an incubator.
Oh, ISB has a campus in Mohali?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, yeah. So there is, so just as for interest, I mean, if you're looking for ISB, you had a vice chancellor, not vice chancellor, I don't know, how, dean, right? He is now leading the Rich initiative in Telangana. Yes, Ajit, right? Rangnekar, yeah.
Yes,
he's running that Rich initiative. I think they have put together a resource, especially for the person who was interested. Balaji was interested in the regulatory thing and all those things.
Yeah.
That could be a contact point
Sure, sir.
for.
Yeah, that's what we thought them only, because they run code called Rich Aid,
Yeah.
which is completely into medical sector, where we are also a partner in that program.
Right.
That's what I thought connected. So that's why I said just write to us. We might have chance to connect.
Yeah, they have a huge cohort every year they bring in, and I'm also associated with Ajit in the review and mentoring side also. But then there's only this much that you can do in mentoring, so don't raise your expectations too high with these mentors. Most of us need to be mentored to start with.
Anyway, thank you so much, sir, for your time. And
You're welcome.
Everyone, lovely audience. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Enjoyed it. Yeah.
Bye.
All the best, guys. Have fun.